Early March, I packed my bags and ventured back to my parents' house, yogi in hand, for what was supposed to be a 10-day trip back home, but is now at its 3-month mark. With that, my incredibly consistent routine of early morning workouts, productive work days, and weekends cooking at my home quickly transformed into a scatterbrained schedule, disturbed by unplanned afternoon naps, constant food comas, and staring at my computer for hours on the couch in the name of productivity. As with any bad habit, I attempted to cut my procrastination and laziness cold turkey by forcing myself to make a brand new Python project and a new video every single day in my 5 Python projects in 5-day series. Besides everything I learned about productivity and creative expression, this project also brought me back to my early days of coding, of the excitement of finally debugging something, the frantic panic about looming deadlines, and the rush of the midnight miracle when your code finally works. Since this challenge seems like a great exercise for anyone from beginners to experienced devs, I thought I would share a little bit more about why I chose Python specifically, the variety of projects that you can do, and the value of doing an exercise like this, whichever field you're in. A few weeks ago, I made a video ranking every programming language I learned in college. To no surprise, Python was by far my favorite for several reasons. First, it's incredibly beginner-friendly. If you're learning to code for the first time, Python is one of the most readable and easiest to pick up languages. Syntactically, it reads the closest to pseudocode, which means there's less jargon to memorize that gets in the way of writing working code. Especially for someone switching from Java or C, Python will look pretty basic, so it'll seem like it's not that powerful. But Python is actually one of the most versatile programming languages out there. For a beginner, learning just this one language will give you the skills to do anything from web development to machine learning, and even interview prep. So for the time spent learning Python, the returns can be endless. And finally, Python has a great community that makes it easy to find help and learn from others. Programming in general is a collaborative process, as should be most things. So the most successful projects rely on the collective input from team members, open source libraries, feedback from online communities, etc. On the surface level, an example of this is Stack Overflow, but extends beyond that to places like GitHub repos, the Python subreddit, and countless Python newsletters where people want to help each other out. So yeah, if you can't tell, I'm a bit of a Python fangirl, so this was a perfect fit for a project like this. In fact, to show how versatile and powerful Python can be, here is a recap of the last 5 projects that I worked on. Although Python is not the perfect language for this, especially compared to Unity, it is a great tool for beginners to get their start with game development. And there are a few beginner-friendly libraries out there like Pygame and Arcade, which is where I got my start for this project. Given the limitations of time, I knew it would be impossible to learn how to make games and make my own original game from scratch in 12 hours. Instead, I just studied and adapted an existing project I found on GitHub, transforming Flappy Bird to become Flappy Yogi. I realized that while jumping in and creating something of your own is always the best way to learn something, if you really do feel stuck, then reading and understanding someone else's code is a great start to get your feet wet. And now when I see these indie games on Reddit or YouTube, I can truly appreciate how much time went into each frame. Even at my full-time job, where we were using big data to literally diagnose cancer from human DNA, we were still using Python to write ML algorithms. So it really can be a powerhouse. And there are some great toolkits and online courses available to make machine learning a bit more accessible to beginners. But to really understand how the algorithms work, a significant amount of calculus and linear algebra knowledge is a must. This day, I ventured into AI territory by reading a lot of articles and writing some code to teach an AI to play ping pong using OpenAI, which is a great playground for learning to train reinforcement learning models. Even though I didn't create much myself this day, I really did enjoy going outside my ML comfort zone and learning something completely new. And if this were to be a week-long project, I would have loved to continue learning about these algorithms and conduct my own experiments training the model. When someone says web development, the first 3 languages that come to mind are HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But Python can actually play a huge role here in making web dev a lot more approachable through Flask, a web development framework. For day 3 of my series, I made a site called Netflix Matrimony, which is a Tinder for Netflix that allows you to swipe through random Netflix recommendations and watch the content with the click of a button. I use Flask specifically to parse through Netflix data from a CSV dump and API to generate what you see on the page. Honestly, web development projects are my absolute favorite and they're well within my comfort zone. So it comes to no surprise that this was my favorite project of the week. And besides sprucing up the UI, there is a lot of potential for expanding the site through having user login, a real working recommendation system, and a lot more, all using Flask. For data visualization, the standard toolkit of languages is R, Python, and dare I say it, MATLAB. They pretty much all do the same thing, so the usage typically varies by industry. But to me, Python is the best choice, partially because it's powered by more toolkits than I can even count on my hands, including Plotly, Matplotlib, Seaborn, ggplot, etc. For my project, I was inspired by my Animal Crossing addiction to find neat trends in all the items I collected, bought, and sold in the game. So I made a series of visualizations using Plotly in a Jupyter notebook to make sense of 10 days worth of data that I collected. There was bound to be one flop this week, and this is the one project that didn't meet my expectations I had before setting out to code, especially since the standard was set pretty dang high after lurking on r/data is beautiful. If I had more time to work on this, I'd love to pull data from an API and make the graphs a lot more interactive instead of just a couple of bland static plots. A script is a series of statements that can be executed over and over in, say, terminal to automate a task that would have otherwise taken a lot longer if done by hand. Since Python is, after all, a scripting language, this is a great beginner project that, as an added benefit, can make you feel like a real hacker. When making a script, I tried to identify a task that's incredibly repetitive, features only a few basic steps, and requires very little thinking. And applying to tech jobs fits that perfectly. So I expanded my Common Intern project to scrape nearly every application link from Glassdoor before applying to each job automatically. This means no more opening hundreds of tabs and filling out nearly identical cookie-cutter job forms. While there isn't much technical theory when it comes to writing scripts, there is a lot of error handling and a lack of predictability that you have to account for. So I ran into a lot of road bumps trying to make this work until that midnight miracle hit and I realized I was doing it all wrong. One of the biggest struggles I face when coding, especially now that it's purely a hobby, is thinking of ideas. Even though there are tons of places online to get inspiration from, I'm always still hit with this writer's block, or I guess coder's block, when thinking of what to make. Every idea I think of is either way too complex, like recreating Netflix, or useless to anyone but me, like analyzing Telugu movie plots. Thus, I usually end up spending a day just researching projects and picking an idea before even opening my IDE. So giving myself just one day to finish a project means that I can't dilly-dally. I have to commit to something even if it isn't perfect. With ample time to create something, I always feel this pressure to make everything perfect. Every small detail has to be just right since there can't be any room for error in a project I have 5 whole days to work on. This mentality led me to choose projects well within my comfort zone. So I was coding, but not learning. But with just one day per project, there really isn't much to lose. If my project sucked, I had the next day to forget about it and move on to something better. This made the series quite liberating and helped me learn new concepts and technologies, even if the code itself wasn't always original. And lastly, now that I'm home with my family with a bit more time on my hands, I wanted to use this new perspective and newfound time to do something different that I otherwise wouldn't have done, say, a year from now. And as other creators have suggested through initiatives like Mayuko's Code with Friends, now is such a great time to leverage our massive online community to make cool stuff. Now, I think after completing those 5 projects, my itch to code, or at least guilt for not doing so, won't be back for a while. But yeah, for those who are beginners to coding or have a lot more time on your hands, hopefully this inspired you to jump in and create something new. And if you do create something new, I'd love to check them out, so please do tag me on Instagram or Twitter or YouTube comments so I can see them and share them with our community. And yeah, that is it for today's video. If you liked it, please give it a big like and subscribe, and I'll see ya in the next one.